those were our reporters, Faith Daniels. A little earlier on, we also had senior reporter Siphamandla Goke, as well as Pooe Lukhona Jones. We continue with our coverage of the ANC's 55th National Elective Conference. And of course, Bradan and I are with you until around 4 o'clock. We have political analyst Lukhona Mnguni as well as TK Boy in studio with us. Of course, TK, a little earlier on, we spoke about the significance of this particular conference, and you were saying that we're blowing it out of proportion.
Yes, in the sense that the bigger one is coming in 2029. Look, the numbers are already baked in when it comes to people have an understanding whether the ANC is in a decline. That's not without question. I think we all know it. So for me, the reason I said it's not that important is the question to ask: when you're in decline, who do you look to either make you rise or to become an irrelevant force? So that, for me, is the bigger issue. So this is really just about baking in the numbers for what's been happening over the last 2 decades.
I guess what's interesting that people want to see is who comes out victorious in the top 6 and what's going to happen in the last 2 years of his first term as president. This is President Cyril Ramaphosa, and whether or not Lukhona, he'll actually be given a second term.
Absolutely, it will be. I mean, of course, this is the first time a president of the ANC is walking into a conference after a first term so crippled and with material scandals really around him, around the Phala issue, with the Justice Sandile Ngcobo, independent panel report poking holes at his story around Phala. But I think, again, people are looking for the wrong thing. In 2017, when President Ramaphosa was elected and this whole Ramaphoria thing erupted, I warned when we were leaving this conference, I said, how has the configuration of the African National Congress changed? Because if the configuration of the ANC does not change, it doesn't matter who is in charge of the ANC, because they will be led and governed by the culture and the ethos that has taken root in the ANC. Of course, President Ramaphosa walked away of Nasrec with a Secretary General that was completely unsupportive. And this again was for the first time that the President and the Secretary General just don't see eye to eye from the get-go. These are the material weaknesses that are probably going to repeat themselves even in this conference, where President Ramaphosa will walk away with a National Executive Committee made up of people that probably half of them he might not have preferred.
Like what happened here in 2017.
Yeah,
absolutely. When he emerged, as you said, in 2017, he emerged with an NEC which was divided, 50-50 maybe, as you say, and he carried on to limp along. And the ANC can really barely afford to do that. I know we're focusing on leadership, which is a big thing, but I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts, TK and Lukhona? You can both come in there, because this is a conference that also supposed to set new policies for the next 5 years. Or have these leadership factional battles crippled the organizations or paralyzed it so much that they won't have enough substantive time to really have a meaningful discussion about things like economic transformation and other issues that bother them?
Well, let me, at the risk of maybe sounding a bit controversial, the ANC doesn't have policy. And this has been the case for the last 10 years. If anyone can tell me what is the ANC's policy on the economy of South Africa, you have to go back to GEAR. And then that was a controversial policy, how it got into the ANC lexicon. So the issue of the ANC looking to policy, everybody knows that when people come here, their sole focus is not you and I as citizens, it's not the economy, it's not even struggling ESCOM. It's the issue where people come in to say, listen, how do I get my own and how do I come out from that? And the reason I say this, people might say, look, you're being a bit controversial. Yes, they've got paper, it's very lovely paper, it's got printed words on it. But the understanding of policy in South Africa, I think we never really spend enough time on what we mean by policy. What the ANC is good at is making policy pronouncements. Pronouncements don't equal policy. And I think that is really taken.
And these are the conferences where they're supposed to actually come up with policies.
Yes.
Absolutely. I want to agree with TK. The ANC is completely distracted from the business of governing. In actual fact, the reason it is in decline is exactly precisely out of its distraction. And this distraction takes root in many ways. And the other problem that has now happened in the ANC is that policy discussions have now become a proxy for leadership battles.
Yes.
So if you support a particular policy position, you get associated with a type of affection. In an environment like that, there can never be policy formulation, because people will shoot down certain ideas out of the basis of where they emanate from, rather than on the strength or weakness of those ideas. To its own admission, when you talk to senior members and senior leaders in the ANC, they tell you the intellectualism in the ANC has significantly declined. You see it in the quality of the discussion documents. If you compare discussion documents of the ANC 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and today, they have become of a very poor quality. This conference has nothing to do with policy. This conference has to do with a race to the power levers so that you can see a change in government. That definitely out of this conference will be some changes done before 2024. And people know, given that the ANC is in decline and might need a coalition partner post-2024, it is important to be in power now in this window period to 2024 to secure your own patronage, to secure your own resources, to secure yourself a higher salary. If you become a minister and you are not, suddenly your pension is boosted up. If you become a deputy president, suddenly you've got lifetime benefits.
Yeah, and we've got live visuals actually, just so the viewer has a bit of context. What you're seeing on the screen right now while we still discuss is the delegates who have, the doors have been opened, so they've made their way into plenary, and they're just still singing and chanting the different regions and the different branches with their placards just to show that they are present. So we do expect that the conference will go ahead soon enough. Lukhona, talking about distraction, you know, when you look at all the positions and the nominations that we've seen so far, even NEC nominations, you know, I'm looking at the top 6 and the NEC, where you'll have people who were stars, if I could call it that for lack of a better word, during the State Capture Commission of Inquiry, your Nombula Mokonyane, your Malusi Gigaba, who got, you know, quite a lot of votes from branches, likely to come back. And those people probably will also then, you know, have some tit for tat, but of effect against the president if he makes it.
You see, when you see crisis coming and you do nothing about it, it eventually becomes reality. So the ANC for the longest time, go to President Nelson Mandela's speech in Mahikeng, organizational reports in your Stellenbosch, you go to them. Very clear about the oncoming crisis of careerism, of using the ANC as a step ladder for self-enrichment and so on. That crisis has now become a reality. These nominations are a testament that the ANC foresaw crisis and did nothing. And that's exactly how it also governs. So you can't then, I mean, you look at that top 10 of NEC nominees. I mean, at some point, top 10 of the NEC, you were talking about the likes of Trevor Manuel, Zola Square, Akada Asmal, Naledi Pandong, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Paulo Jordan. There was a time the gravitas of that National Executive Committee was inspiring to all South Africans, and the ANC looked almost untouchable. Now you've got accused criminals, accused thieves, about to become the core of this next leadership of the ANC. What does that communicate to society? Tells you that the ANC has run out of leaders.
Yeah, no, as you put it there, that if you look back at conferences, the documents, historically, they've identified what the problem is, but today the problem still persists. There's been like a lack of political will maybe to address the problem. What do you think?
Well, I think the term political will, I know it gets used quite a lot, but I think we also have to speak to the idea of capacity. And I know when people say capacity, you speak about, no, sometimes goodwill is not enough. And the one thing I always say about the ANC, which is very odd, is for a party that's 100, is the ANC is very bad at understanding history. The ANC did not learn the mistakes of Frelimo. The ANC did not learn the mistakes of the MPLA in Angola. It didn't learn from ZANU. And when you speak to people who come from that region, especially those political parties, they will amazingly tell you, we spoke to the ANC. We told them that when you get in, it's a very different story. And yet they don't seem to learn from that. And sometimes when I mean capacity, as in, there's an interesting book I'm reading from, I think it's Vogel, who speaks about the Chinese Communist Party when they were in deep crisis after the Cultural Revolution and Mao, which is where this ANC kind of finds itself. And, you know, they made a point of saying, how do we get the next generation to take over from us? And it was a concerted effort. They put rules and regulations to say, listen, if you are a star, if you know how to do this, in either media, business, let's get you into the party. But if you look at what the ANC is just a continuation of people from 1994 who, sorry to say this, I don't think they get a job anywhere else in any sector in South Africa. So if you, and this is an issue I always have with them, is to say, if you cannot get a job in any other sector in South Africa, but you're presiding over a most complex economy, what do you think the outcome is going to be? Hence, I go back to capacity is what's missing in the ANC.
Yeah, capacity is missing, and vision maybe, Lukhona?
Yeah. The vision is there. And it's, for the ANC, it's a very crisp vision. build a non-sexist, non-racial, prosperous society.
Democratic as well.
Democratic, right? That's the vision of the ANC crystallized. The question is whether or not they've chosen to walk away from the vision. And they have decided to walk away from the vision. Now, when you walk away from the vision, and of course you deal with issues of lack of capacity, you deal with issues of an intergenerational war that is clearly not making a breakthrough. There is an intergenerational war in the ANC. Younger people feel that they are locked out of, power inside the party to influence in terms of ideas, to bring their skills to the fore. I mean, we just recently saw the Communist Party of China having its conference a few months back, and the people who were being elected as provincial leaders, these are professors, these are people who have led universities, these are people who have dynamic expertise in aeronautical engineering. It was really quite impressive. Leave that, you may say whatever about China in terms of is it a democratic state or whatever. But the investment in expertise, because governance is a science. That's why TK teaches it, right? Because it's not something that you just wake up and walk into. But the ANC has made the bar and entry so low that everybody really truly believes this thing called government is something you can walk into and you provide political leadership, as they say. But how do you provide political leadership in an environment where you don't understand the reports, the technical reports that are being tabled in front of you? How do you make decisions in an environment where you have no expertise?
We shouldn't be surprised, therefore, that we see these kind of local government failures as an example.
Exactly.
Because of that capacity issue. Because as a governing party, you need to deploy your human resources properly, as you were using the example, Lukhona, of what's happening in China.
And I mean, at some point, I'm sorry to say this, because TK was saying that, he was making reference to something that happened years ago, and he said, Bradian would remember, but I wasn't born yet. But,
is there some intergenerational war here?
They could learn from us. The ANC could learn from us. We don't only put it on paper.
How to make it work.
How to make it work.
Yeah,
they could learn.
Sorry,
at some point, we did have a president who didn't have a matric, and we're expected to sit at home and tell our children
and he was
to
boastful
study.
And he was boastful about that.
He was very proud about it.
And how do you then, in that environment, encourage people about education and going? Of course, he has a foundation that helps people go to school, but he was boastful about not being educated, and educated people were profiled as clever blacks.
Yes.
Because if you were black and you were educated, the reason you were now speaking truth to power was because of this education that has been planted in your mind and has poisoned your mind because you speak against the government.
You should be dealt with, basically.
Of course, and people were dealt with.
But I think what's going to be interesting as well to both of you is what Bradan actually brought to our attention earlier, that when the Deputy President gives his report a little later on in day one of this conference, there is particular things that he should be presenting that he was given to by the Integrity Committee. And those two reports, as Lukhona had described, will be the war will then start all over again.
Well, and I guess this maybe speaks to the incapacity, because just if we logically speak this through, there is an institution set up to look after integrity.
Yeah.
It is supposed to make a pronouncement. Rather than make a pronouncement, it says, let's take it to a battlefield where there's going to be war.
Yes.
In a way, one would say that's almost dereliction of duty. You're not doing what you were set up to do, but you're going to take it to the hornet's nest, which is very problematic. And again, when I say capacity, this is what I'm speaking about, the ability to almost see what is happening and say, this is a wrong decision. Because there's no way it's going to bring any unity on that floor. If anything, personalities are going to come up. I think Lukhona was saying earlier on that it really could literally lead to the first major battle in it, and which is quite problematic. And it really says to me, what is the point of having a integrity commission, women's league, youth league, any other league, if they don't do their job?
And
it's a complete abdication of duty by the National Executive Committee. It's the biggest political risk the ANC has been walked into conference with ever. Look, as TK is saying, you've got over 4,000 delegates who are going to be there. You should have taken the Integrity Commission report and the NEC, which is a much smaller forum.
And they met yesterday.
And they should have processed that report and give proper guidance to conference about these reports.
Yeah.
Now you want to start the conversation on the conference floor when you know the tensions are
And
high.
that's what's going to be distracting.
And it
for
might
the
be
whole...
and it might be a deliberate political gamble anyway by some people.
Yeah, that's a fair point you're making there, Lukhona. Lukhona Mnguni and TK Pooe in here with us in our makeshift studio with Masiho here as we analyze, as we build up, setting the scene for the conference of the ANC, which will be kicking off shortly. We were showing you some live visuals earlier from inside the plenary venue, and we were seeing some ANC delegates singing and dancing as they are getting ready to start their conference.
You see, what's the ANC regalia? Is it gold or yellow? It's yellow, green and black.
Yeah, black,
gold,
green and gold.
Gold, exactly. All right, let's take you to a short ad break.